6. There are only 3 ways back into our own time and space, Avon announced. First, through a white hole. The trouble is that a white hole is the point at which material sucked into a black hole emerges, and that's difficult to find without the right equipment, which we don't have, and impossible to enter, unless held stable by a 6-mile square building, created by technology which we certainly do not possess, and which is also not widely available even to the upper hierarchy of the Federation. He looked at Corell. She wondered if he was giving her a clue. Then, there are stable black holes and rotating black holes. I thought all black holes were things to be avoided, said Villa. What you think and what is are normally 2 different things, Avon retorted. Non-rotating black holes lead to singularities at which matter is stripped to nothingness before being spat out through a white hole. And apart from that, the tidal forces on a stable black hole would tear the ship apart before we even got near it. Spinning black holes, however, lead to wormholes connecting up all possible universes. They are the links between past, present, and future in each and every one of the 11 dimensions. So, we go looking for a rotating black hole and dive in, Villa announced. Then he frowned. How do we find one if it's a black hole against a black sky? For a start, Corell told him, we can't just find any spinning black hole. This is all a little outside my field, but the little astrophysics I do know suggests we need a black hole that is big enough not to tear us apart. The tidal force of a spinning black hole is inversely proportional to the square of the mass of the hole, said Blake. Eh? Said Villa. That will teach you to go round handing out gratuitous personalities that offer information, Corell told him. Well, I only did it because Aurak kept refusing to talk to us. The bigger the black hole, Villa, the lower the gravity field output, which is the main danger of the ship being torn apart, the computer continued. So go and look for the biggest black hole you can find. One that is at least 2,000 times larger than the Earth's sun. There is only one such object. Ooh, where? At the centre of the galaxy. Corell and Blake spoke simultaneously. All travellers knew about that black hole, and knew about avoiding it too. There is just one other possibility, however, continued Corell. We don't have to go back to our own universe. Why not? Asked Villa. The question should be why, Corell told him. I don't seem to recall us having vast hoards of valuable riches stashed away there, nor yet some loved ones who need to be returned to. Avon was guarded in his reply, but there is the question of unfinished business, he said. Perhaps you would care to give us details? The business is private, Avon told her. Since it involves risking everything to enter a black hole, and risking everything again to come out in the right time and the right place, and since I don't recall having heard that the insides of black holes are covered with signposts pointing the way to each reality, it seems quite a risk without a full knowledge of why. You would like to stay? Asked Avon. Possibly, Corell replied. And what do you offer us if we stay? Life on board this freighter until we grow senile and can't work the controls, or until we get so mad with each other we end up locked in our own rooms, never daring to come out for fear of being talked to by a computer programmed by Villa? Is that what you want? I offer nothing, Avon. What do you want? The chance to settle old scores? But in this reality, said Villa, there are parallels to our own galaxy. Corell confirmed the supposition. Then there might be another me. That seems a good enough reason for going back, said Avon. And Blake might still be alive in this reality. And working as a farmhand on a frontier world, having never had a revolutionary thought in his life, Corell added. What's the point of this line of thought, Villa? People may exist or may not. If you want real parallels, you've got to get into that black hole and find a reality closer to the one we know than this one is. If you choose to stay, it is to make this reality into what you want it to be. You create your life here and be glad of it. There is another factor. The voice was from Blake. Yes, Blake? Said Villa intently, anxious to calm matters down and to maintain his affiliation with the computer. This ship and all of you are in a universe from which you do not originate. Although this position is stable at the moment, you cannot stay here indefinitely. How long have we got? Asked Carell. In 87 hours, 23 minutes, the molecular structure of the ship will start to deteriorate. The structure will become unstable to the extent of not fulfilling necessary functions 23 hours, 17 minutes after that. How? Carell's voice was cut off by Blake. Following Villa's instructions, it always gave relevant information. If the ship leaves at once and heads directly for the black hole at the center of the galaxy at maximum speed, then the black hole will be reached within 79 hours. Not much time to spare, said Carell. So we turn back, said Avon. Now. You have a way of getting what you want, Carell told him. You haven't been tampering with Blake by any chance? Avon looked at Carell for a moment. You are a beautiful woman, Avon told her. Don't reduce your beauty by stupidity. Take the ship up. We're wasting time. Long journeys, as far as Villa was concerned, were becoming slightly more acceptable. For the most part, Avon and Carell were deeply involved in computer work. Now Villa could work with Kat and talked to Blake. It helped. The problem that Avon and Carell each strove to solve in their separate ways was apparent even to Villa, with his almost total lack of computer awareness. They had to find a way of entering the black hole, a way of getting through, and worst of all, a way of ensuring that they not only emerged, but actually emerged in the right time zone and the right continuum. It was a problem beyond the abilities of any individual to solve. Indeed, it was beyond the abilities of most 13th-generation computers. However, both sets of computations were finished with several hours to spare, and fortunately for the flight deck, Carell and Avon produced analyses that agreed. What Avon would have done, had Carell actually disputed with him in the area of computer-based analysis, Villa dreaded to think. As the solutions were compared, Villa continued to contemplate his new awareness. In every reality, another Villa exists, another version of himself with a slightly different persona, making him slightly different. How would he get on with himself, but not himself? Pretty well, he thought. But how would Avon get on with Avon? And how would Avon react if he came face to face with another Blake? Another killing? Reconciliation? Afterwards, however, Villa's tales were not of multi-person populated realities, but of the pain of high-gravity pressure, of the screams from fusion engines asked to do too much, of the way the display screens in the Blake computer could only give out images of streaks of light rather than clear pictures of passing stars crammed closely together at the galactic centre. He would speak of the looming blackness of the hole itself growing ever larger, and the essential nature of his work relaying data to Carell as she tried to steer revenge into the very centre of the hole itself. Then he told of the all-pervading blackness, the nothingness showing up on the screens, and the long battle to turn the ship precisely so that they exited the way they had come. But, as the calculations had shown, they had to leave at a velocity just different enough to allow them to compensate for the injection of power that revenge had picked up through the white hole. Then, the build-up of pressure and noise once more as they left the black hole and re-emerged into the galaxy. Villa would conclude his story with a word about Carell. Throughout the whole tale, he would imply that it was he, Villa, who had got them through, passing on information right and left, keeping a calm head while others shouted, acting as a focus for information within the ship. But he would end with a little sideline, a trivial incident designed to show his modesty in praising another, and yet leaving his listeners craving more information about the black hole. Carell, he would say, fascinated me. As we left the hole and came back into the real world, she calmly tapped into the communications channel and listened. And that was the whole point. At this juncture, he would turn from face to face as if to suggest that anyone closely following his narrative should have realized that point. But for those less well-endowed intellectually, he'd spell it out anyway. We didn't know if we had come back into our galaxy or not. And she just listened for a few moments, and then calmly said, "I think this is the right place. I find that quite remarkable." And then, with a half smile, he would sit back in his chair, take another good sip of the drink, which was given him by hosts and hostesses grateful to have such a tale recounted by one actually there, and wait for the praise and the questions. Fortunately for Villa, Carell rarely spoke of the journey through the hole, for the simple reason that she never found a need to talk of times past, and when she did speak, it was to recall some of her more glorious occasions. For her, the past was mainly irrelevant, unless it was used to gain an insight into a problem of the present, or contained within itself a reason for her own present actions. To Carell, the only real interest was the future. Reminiscing was a waste of time, but she would sit and listen to others tell of the past, for that gave her a lot of good information concerning the person speaking, information that might come in handy one day. She never gave out such free hints about herself. Avon, too, kept silent about the affair. What Villa failed to report, because in reality he had spent much of the journey with his eyes closed and mind very firmly shut, was that Avon had used the last few hours of time they had in the alternative galaxy doing what Villa claimed Carell had done upon their return, listening to communications chatter. Avon had even sent out a few messages himself, trying to learn not only about the galaxy they had entered, but also trying to find out the state of the Federation and whatever administration there was in that alternative reality. He also sent out 3 requests for information about current myths and legends, and received informative, if baffled, replies. Once through the hole and certain that they were back in their own galaxy in their own time zone, Carell faced her dilemma once more. In the end, she asked Avon directly for information. He looked at the woman, lifted his right hand, pointed a finger in a familiar style, but then stopped himself. He turned away. "We have time distort, we have plasma shielding, we do not have teleport. I thought that was the next move, or do you have something else in mind?" "I have nothing in mind," she replied tentatively. Was there some double meaning in the use of that word? "Then leave the planning to me. But perhaps you wish to leave the ship now." "Not after I took so long to find you, Avon." "Why did you find me? If you had just wanted Aurak, you would have left us long ago." "Do you want me to leave?" The question seemed to surprise Avon. He turned to face her squarely. Live on this ship alone with Villa, a wine-drinking hand computer, and a main computer answering to the name Blake. You are a pilot, and you are prepared to converse with Villa. What more could I ask? The question is not what could you ask, but what could you do? If I am to pilot this ship again, it will be helpful to know where I am taking it, and why. To find the materials we need for teleport. Not good enough, Avon. Try again. Avon's calmness disappeared. "It does not have to be good enough," he said aggressively. "As I have said, you are welcome for the moment to work on this ship. Your skills are good, you are useful. The same can be said of Villa, but make no mistake, you are not indispensable." "So you consider it your ship, do you? And what if I said I wanted to go somewhere else? Her voice continued to be as sweet and gentle as ever. You would start to be tiresome, which normally you are not. But I will put you down on the nearest planet. Remember, you owe me from scat, I don't owe you. And I'll tell you when I am collecting. Corell seemed to consider her position for a moment. Is it really a teleport you are after? She asked. When Avon did not respond, she continued, half to herself. And after that, when you have built up another ship to rival those you have lost before, what will you do? Track down Servalan? I told you, I have unfinished business. Does it really matter to you so much? Certain things matter. We could stay forever drifting in space, watching ourselves decay. Or we could decide to look after ourselves. Revenge against Servalan on its own is meaningless. But revenge allied to a new plan can have some kind of meaning. So, you really are another Blake. Blake wanted to kill Servalan, to build a new and better galaxy in the glorious name of the Freedom Party. But the party was corrupted by its own plans even before Blake started using Liberator. The party that Blake had so much feeling for still wanted to control people, to tell them what to do. That power warped his mind. He wanted to destroy Star One. Do you know what that meant? Star One maintained the environment on hundreds of planets. It made worlds that were otherwise useless into places that could be lived on. And he wanted to destroy that, causing the death of countless millions. That is the result of the mindless battle of two political ideals, two political maniacs. Blake against Servalan, each perfectly assured that what they did was for the best. Well now, you have to decide for me. All right, let me tell you. Blake felt that he could never be a member of the Federation's kind of society. He had to oppose the Federation, but he did so in the name of the grand new society that the revolution would bring about, with him, presumably, as one of the great leaders. Blake would become a benevolent dictator, which is why you disliked him even more than Servalan. For Servalan, on the other hand, there was no doubt. She wanted to be supreme ruler of everything, with total power of life and death over the billion souls in the galaxy. You can understand that. It doesn't appeal to you, but you can understand that. But you saw Blake as aiming to gain power through pretending to liberate. That was how you saw him. You saw him as a cheat. You felt all revolutionaries are phony, but Blake was the worst, because he presented himself as something different from the Federation. In Blake's new society, everyone would be told how free they were, and they would all really believe it. They wouldn't drug the atmosphere anymore, because everyone would feel for Blake without that sort of treatment. You could see through that. Avon would still be the outlaw in Blake's society, just as he was in Servalan's. What do you have left, Avon? To be an exile? You thought of that. You thought of taking a ship that was self-sufficient and just driving it on your own outside society, existing, being, a hermit. So what does Avon do? The life within society to you is meaningless. Conforming to the wishes of the Federation of the average man is meaningless. The rebellion of Blake is meaningless. Exile is meaningless. You don't want to change anything, except perhaps to kill off Servalan. Everyone else is a fool, except Avon. Corell looked at the man she had just analysed, but he did not look back. Instead, he was staring at the display screens in front of him. I have a message. It was the voice of the Blake computer. I see it, said Avon, still looking at the monitors. It is from Federation Station Subcommand at grid reference 953002, persisted the computer. They are demanding information on our flight pattern and on authorization for our present whereabouts. Since when did the Federation demand information like that? They normally just shoot first, and then ask you to submit a reference sheet in quadruplicate, said Villa. The logical answer, Carell told him, is that there is some authorized but unidentifiable space traffic around here. I wonder what it's up to. The message is being repeated, and the demand for a reply is getting stronger, announced Blake. Avon pressed the necessary key. We are the space freighter Revenge, bound for the planet MD2551R, carrying supplies of protein supplement. On what authorization? Came the disembodied voice. On the authorization of the Parliament and Supreme Council of the planet Ridgix, said Avon. You will take your craft into orbit around the star lying at grid reference 993008 so that you can be boarded and your credentials checked. Villa got worried. Where did you get that name from? He demanded. From the map, Avon answered shortly. Well, let's go there, or rather let's go somewhere. Anywhere. No, said Avon. There is something happening here, and I would like to know what it is. There must be a good reason for the Federation to be unsure of who is on their side and who is not. Blake. Yes, Avon, replied the computer. Give me a rundown of all the spaceships within 10,000 spatials of here that are not openly displaying Federation signals. There are only 2 such ships. One is a star cluster type freighter bearing 4x7x9, distance 1,500 spatials. And the other? Asked Villa. Is the freighter Revenge, said Carell. Is that not right, Blake? Carrying 3 people. Villa Restal, Care Avon. Thank you, Blake. I think we have the picture, said Villa. So, shall we go and take a look at whoever or whatever the Federation have us mixed up with, said Avon. Or shall we try to outrun them and never know what is going on? Put like that, Villa found it easy to opt for running away. Carell sided with Avon, however, and as always, he was outvoted. Avon continued with the instructions. Blake, give us a close-up of the star cluster freighter. A picture emerged upon the screen. The ship appeared to have undergone substantial modifications, although still bearing some of the hallmarks of the star cluster type. Extra sections seemed to have been grafted on the rear ramjets, and many of the proper formal markings had also disappeared. How many people on board the ship? 3 people, Blake paused. And 2 vampires. Servalan. Servalan would never travel in something looking like that. She always retains a degree of style, even if it slows her down, Villa objected. Blake, commanded Avon, I want a complete spectral analysis of that ship. And when you have it, I have it, Avon. I want anything that can be identified as relating directly to the people and the mutoids on the ship removed. Then remove anything relating to the legitimate normal structure of a ship of that type, and then report what you have left. Carell, start manoeuvring towards the location demanded by the Federation ship, but do it slowly and awkwardly. We need time. The spectrum analysis remaining, said Blake, reveals a high degree of signum, much converted to crystal form, although far more than is needed to withstand a conventional plasma attack, plus some still in its purest raw form. There is also a substantial amount of RT alloy towards the rear of the ship, presumably located in the hold. Finally, there is a combination of alloys and crystals at the very rear of the ship, which would indicate major modification to the ship's drive unit. Carell and Avon exchanged a long, silent, knowing glance. Villa got impatient. I know those looks, he exclaimed, so stop playing about. What's going on? He looked from one to the other, but neither made a move to explain. It sounds like a description of us. So what does... Villa's voice trailed away as the implications began to sink in. Avon smiled condescendingly. Raw Signum is only available in one place. You have been there. You may use the ship's log to remind yourself. You may also remind yourself that that place is halfway across the galaxy. And I can't think of too many reasons why you need more Signum apart from withstanding an attack, unless you are going through a black hole. RT alloy is used for one thing only, and that is the production of laser infusion sidearms. Finally, you don't expect freighters to carry drive modifications. So, Villa, even you may now begin to see that we have just used an exit route from a black hole which someone else is using. And that someone else is also using SCAT as the entry point into the other reality. But what for? When we found ourselves in the alternative universe, we needed to get out as fast as possible. Quite true, Carell agreed. But we had no plan when we went in there, and we spent a lot of time modifying the ship so we could get out again. Supposing you knew what you were up to. You went in with a plan. We know that particular version of the galaxy is underpopulated, so it makes an ideal spot for gathering raw materials, buying up armaments, modifying ships, in fact everything necessary to prepare for a friendly little war. But if it is Servalan, what is she doing preparing a war? Argued Villa. She's never had too much trouble getting ships before. When she was Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces of the Federation of the Inner and Outer Worlds, that was true. And during her short life as President, even more true. But now, as a Commissioner of the Federation, she has freedom to roam around the galaxy investigating crimes and sorting out local trouble. But that is hardly enough for Servalan, is it? So you think she's preparing for a comeback? I'm damn sure of it, Avon told him. And we have just stumbled on her supply route. The question is, what do we do about it? I don't suppose running in the opposite direction is one of the options you are considering? Asked Villa with vain hope. The Federation run by Servalan is bad news, said Carell. Right, agreed Villa at once. But the Federation run by some of the councillors who displaced her could be even worse. Or better, Carell countered. At this stage, we don't know. None of us has actually been at the heart of political affairs during the past 6 months. A Federation mixed up in a civil war could be the greatest opportunity of all, said Avon. An opportunity for what? Murder, bloodshed, extermination, said Carell. Isn't that what goes on anyway? Asked Avon. We all of us have unfinished business with the sort of people who love power for power's sake within the Federation. I'm not sure that I do, Carell argued. You do more than anyone, said Avon. Carell smiled at Avon. And Villa? Do you have unfinished business with the Federation? I don't really know. Do I, Avon? I thought you were concerned about the death of Blake. Villa looked puzzled. Of course I am. And we all know who killed Blake. You care, Avon. Are you sure? Sure, Avon. I was standing there, 3 feet from you. You killed Blake. I saw the hole you made in his body. Now you're not going to tell me that I imagined all that. No. Perhaps you are right. And with that, Avon left the control room and returned to his cabin. What's all that about? Villa asked Carell, genuinely puzzled. There can't be many explanations, Carell told him. Now we have to decide how to deal with our friends from the Federation. At the rate we're going, we shall be docking in about 45 minutes.